Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of Khmer Cross Talk. This is episode 260. So, as you know, Cross Talk has been a show that dominates international affairs. And this week, we are honored to have another international guest on our show. With us here today, we have Dato Azalina Othman Said. Thank you, Minister.
Hello, Rinith.
Thank you for welcoming our show.
Thank you for having me in your talk show.
Yeah. So Dato is the Minister of Law from Malaysia, and she visiting Cambodia today. And of course, we are discussing here about the purpose of her visit and the potential cooperation, legal cooperation to be specific, between Malaysia and Cambodia. So, Dato, if you don't mind, can you please tell us why are you here today? This is your first time in Cambodia?
No, this is my second time.
Your second time, yeah. When was the last time you visited?
First time I came a few years ago when I was a university student.
Oh,
yeah.
Yes.
And, it's different. I wouldn't be entering such hotels as big as this.
So, can you tell us about your purpose, the purpose of your visit here? So.
As you know, Malaysia is the ASEAN chairmanship for 2025. Mm-hmm. So, being the minister in charge of law, I make it as a responsibility to visit personally all the ASEAN law or justice minister. And in Cambodia, the Deputy Prime Minister is also the Minister of Justice. And the whole objective is to invite the representative from Cambodia, the Kingdom of Cambodia, especially the Deputy Prime Minister, who is also the Justice Minister, to attend some meetings in Kuala Lumpur that we're going to have a ASEAN Law Forum, which is a regional forum among all the ASEAN law ministers or justice ministers. Okay.
Speaking of, this year, congratulations to your country for being this year ASEAN chair. So, speaking of bilateral relation, regional relation, according to the statistics from the National Bank of Cambodia, Malaysia is actually the number 6 when it comes to FDI flow in Cambodia. Of course, we have the Malaysian Business Chamber of Commerce here, MBCC. I witnessed so many Malaysian business people here. So, from your own perspective, what do you think about this bilateral relation between the Kingdom of Cambodia and Malaysia? What do you think about it? And you see any potential space for the future growth?
I think, of course, you cannot deny that when you talk about economic growth, especially in reference to most of the countries in the ASEAN region, and you talk about the Kingdom of Cambodia, the relationship or the bilateral relationship has always been ongoing since before. And I think one of the biggest challenge right now for both countries is utilization of technology to benefit both countries to go forward in reference to economic growth, financial growth, trade growth, and also without doubt when it comes to legal reform. So because of the platform for 2025 is emphasizing a lot in technological advancement, I think the relationship of Kingdom of Cambodia and Malaysia bilateral on every aspect cannot set aside the technological investment that is needed for both countries. And I think it's a good premise for ongoing dialogue, the bilateral dialogue between both countries. And in reference to Malaysia, as you know, we are huge on data centers. And now the government of Malaysia, in reference to the relationship between Malaysia and Singapore, we are creating a special economic zone to create more data centers, which is needed and utilized by many parts of the world in reference to usage of technology. So maybe this is something that the Kingdom of Cambodia can look into or participate in such procedure and process.
Nice. So of course, you are the Minister of Law, so it must be the legal cooperation we are addressing here. I'm very interested in law and justice. Actually, I'm a big fan of John Crisham's book. So
you watch all the movies, then?
Yeah, I love John Crisham. I always have his book in my bags.
Wow.
Yeah. So. You specifically on the legal cooperation between Cambodia and Malaysia. Oh, you said you are meeting with our Minister of Justice.
Yes, after this,
sir.
yes.
So what is your perspective on this aspect, on legal cooperation? What are the potential, what area has the biggest potential for legal cooperation between the two ASEAN member states?
Of course, for the Kingdom of Cambodia and Malaysia, one of the most important bilateral or legal bilateral is talking about the similarities in legal reform. Number one, if you talk about the laws affecting vulnerable groups, for example, children. And I know also the Kingdom of Cambodia and the Deputy Prime Minister himself are great advocacies, same as I, in reference to the element of legal aid, access to justice, allowing everyone in our country to be able to have legal protection. But in today's world, because of the element of people being very far away from the court or the system, you cannot deny the fact that using technology, using AI for access to justice. So in reference to Malaysia, for example, we're very huge on using digital courts or AI, we call it, in reference to some of the process of court itself cannot be a conservative process. And then in reference to legal aid also, to be able to work together in reference to the usage of such technology. But what is most important, as I mentioned earlier, my meeting with the media today, is the usage of both jurisdiction in reference to cross-border insolvency. And cross-border insolvency, as you know, affects every country has got multiple laws in reference to winding up and insolvency of companies. So you talk about economic growth, you must also be able to utilize the law to be created and to be manageable. So when I'm meeting the Deputy Prime Minister later, we are also going to talk about all the new reforms that the Ministry of Justice is looking at, that I hope when it comes to the ASEAN, some of the meetings that we are doing, that the Minister or the Ministry representative can also attend. We are doing, say for example, this issue for, when you mentioned earlier on the interview about economic prosperity and development, you cannot deny the fact of using alternate dispute resolution. Alternate dispute resolution you talk about is the commercial arbitration platform, commercial mediation platform, and these are all similar strategies that most countries should be using, because not necessarily when you settle dispute you have to settle through court. Because each court, say for example, the Kingdom of Cambodia may be influenced by the European courts, the way the courts are being run. Whereas in Malaysia, we are influenced by the English court, because we've been colonized by the English. But even though the court process is different, but the end result is always the same, which is in reference to access to justice, or to be fair in the justice, the judiciary, the legislature, the lawmakers, and also in reference to the lawyers. Those are all similar work and similar pattern. So what I believe that for the ASEAN region, because most of the ASEAN region have been colonized, so with different colony done by the Europeans way back then. You have the Dutch for Indonesia, you have the Spanish for Philippines, and then you have British for the Malaysia and Singapore. So that is why I believe that when it comes to some of the laws of each of the region, all the laws have been drafted, implemented from that perspective, from that country. But now, because of technology, the differences can be made into similarities. For example, issues on bankrupt. There's so many bankrupts out there, especially when the economy is bad. But enforcement of bankruptcy is important. So same thing like you're winding up. So I basically want to be able to speak to the Deputy Prime Minister to be able to work more from the legal perspective. Although the Kingdom of Cambodia's legal process or legal justice system is different from ours. But I believe with technology, there'll be conversation will be more on similarity than difference.
We are talking about Cambodia here, to be specific. So I think, are you planning on signing any kind of agreement, on your visit here?
Yeah, I think we will be discussing about what most important is the regional meeting of the law ministers. I know that there's a lot of conversation that most important, the region when it comes to the legal process must look into one particular item that we can work together, or maybe having a working committee. So I will have to discuss with him further.
Okay. We have touched on Cambodia as a specific country, as an individual country, but we cannot forget that Malaysia is this year ASEAN chair. You know, so can you, if you don't mind, can you tell us, Dato, about any kind of mechanism reform that Malaysia is working on, you know, to improve legal cooperation among with ASEAN member states?
That's why I mentioned earlier, number one, this issue on cross-border insolvency. I'm looking into, I think one of the similar challenges besides from the commercial aspect in reference to the usage of alternate dispute resolution is the issue on online harms. Especially every country in the world faces the same challenges when you're facing usage of the digital platform. You talk about scammers, financial fraud, you talk about sexual offences. So these are all things that is now considered like a new legal challenge, a new act of crime ongoing. So I believe that ASEAN must be speaking in one voice when it comes to certain similarity enforcement. I think you an analogy like years ago, one of the regional cooperation for ASEAN countries, one of the key elements for regional cooperation besides trade or commercial aspect was the law on drugs, against drugs. There's a huge law in reference to crime against drugs. So the laws on drugs is quite similar in certain countries on enforcement. Although at the same time, when you look into certain international organizations, they believe that sometimes the triangle of where the region itself is considered one of the most famous golden triangle in reference to for certain offences, drug related. But then it doesn't mean that the countries do not need certain ability for enforcement agencies to work together in reference to certain punishment, certain processes, extrajudicial approaches. So because of that, I believe that the bilateral relationship has always been ongoing, depending on the subject matter. But now, of course, from the legal aspect, the only conversation that I know that is very similar in whichever language of any ASEAN countries is the challenge of the digital law. In reference, you mentioned earlier about the AI.
Yeah.
You mentioned about there's so many things happening now. So we came back from the law ministers conference in Zanzibar. Yeah. And even the Commonwealth Secretariat that handles all the countries being colonized by the British is also realizing that you cannot run away from technology, from AI. You have to address it. So this is a conversation. You have to legally address it from the legal aspect. I don't know why some people tell me, well, does it mean that the judges and the lawyers will be replaced by technology? Because the AI is a system. You feed it into facts, so it comes up. But then the answer is that, well, maybe certain things that lawyers do, for example, court documents, processes, statement of claim, the machine can do it. So law firms will be smaller, that you can work from anywhere. You don't have to really rely on person, like individual filling blanks and go to court. So everything will be digitalized. Well, of course, it'll be cheaper and be faster. But then the challenge is that in the end of the day, when you go to court and it's a court case, litigation, you need a human factor, the human aspect to make that decision, whether you believe or you don't believe to the accused or the defense that has been raised. But then you cannot deny the conversation of technology. So maybe this is something that the ASEAN Law Ministers conference in Malaysia, when all the law ministers sit together, may have to have this conversation. What do we do with this technological challenge from the legal perspective? That is one thing I can think of as I speak to you.
Yes. Globally, I have to take on the global aspect, the global scale. So, as the one, heading the legal sector in Malaysia, what role do you think, do you see Malaysia playing in shaping legal reform, especially international arbitration standard? And how do you specifically and Malaysia overall plan to push for this greater and more innovative oversight mechanism in ASEAN and beyond?
Well, if you ask me generally, the immediate thing in my mind is definitely ADR, alternate dispute resolution. Because of, I came back from China, Shenzhen and Guangzhou, and also Hong Kong. And ADR, alternate dispute resolution, is considered one of the big thing now because people cannot afford to go to court; it's too expensive. So any country that aggressively go into international businesses, like bilateral or multilateral businesses, must have a clause on arbitration, commercial arbitration, because you're supposed to save money and settle dispute fast. So these are something that I think for the ASEAN region is something that you cannot deny the importance of the existence. That you have another door to settle dispute, especially business dispute. You know, for a lot of people who invest in business, like in Kingdom of Cambodia, businesses are developing, prospering, same thing like in Malaysia. Whenever there's a dispute, there will always be a dispute. You need a fast solution. But when you go to court, you cross appeal, going to court, it takes a long time. So this is also another conversation that ASEAN region must have, that we are able to come up with a commercial arbitration platform in reference to alternate dispute resolution, so that we are able to settle the dispute fast and carry on with the work. So that's why it's needed. Like for example, I give you an example before we end this interview. You talk about the European Union. How many countries in the European Union? So in the European Union, one of the big thing in the country, they have their own set of laws for the European countries, is that ADR, alternate dispute resolution, because they are always doing businesses among themselves. They don't wait, because if you go to court, some countries speak French, some speak Latin, some speak Germany. Even in the European bloc, there is multiple language. Same thing like in our ASEAN region. But when it's a dispute and you're talking about economic growth, you're talking about money, you do speak in one language. So maybe that is another thing that we are able to look at, that should we have a similar platform in reference to certain kind of element of maybe on commercial justice.
Yes. So that's it, Dato. That's it for my question. I just want 1 minute of your time. I want you to look at our audience and say what you want for 1 minute.
In your language or in mine?
English, of course.
What do I say? Okay,
Anything.
to all the viewers in the Kingdom of Cambodia. Is it the whole of Cambodia, right?
Yes.
Kingdom of Cambodia. I hope that everyone must know their rights in the law. It doesn't matter whether it's a domestic law or international law. Especially when we are going to be visiting each other's countries, being tourists, we have to know what we can and we cannot do. And having knowledge, being able to know your rights is very important. So I hope everyone out there know their rights.
Thank you
so
Dato.
much.
Thank you so much. And again, it's our great honor to have you on a crosstalk. So that's it for this week's episode. And we hope you learn a lot from this. And we're going to see you next week. For now, goodbye.
Bye-bye.